All right, guys, hey, another episode, Junk Removal Made Simple, brought to you by the Junk Removal Authority. My name is Lee Godbold, and I am with the Junk Removal Authority, the junk removals industry's premier provider of business packages, websites, search engine optimization, call center, and many other products. You can check us out at junkra.com. Today, what we're going to talk about is how to sell your junk removal business for the big millie, $1 million. So one of the very first steps you got to do is you got to figure out, you got to believe that, hey, this is possible. So a lot of people, when they start a junk removal business, you're not going for $1 million. You're going just because you're trying to work for yourself, and you're probably trying to equal or make a little bit more money than you're currently making. A lot of people that enter the business are like me, like I was. You know, I was making under $20,000 a year when I started this. So, you know, I thought about $1 million business. Not necessarily that I want to sell, but I certainly believed it was possible. Didn't know how the hell to get to it, but you know, I did know it was possible, and that was one of the major things that's allowed us to build an organization to this size, because I believe that it could be done. So that's your very first step, is you got to actually believe it is possible. It's being done all throughout the country. You've got 1-800-GOT-JUNK franchises, you've got junk doctors, you've got locally owned junk removal businesses that are making enough money to be sold for $1 million. Some are being sold for $1 million plus, but there's all over the country. There's people in every market that are making great money that could lead to a $1 million business. So here's a few things to remember. Number one, you got to know it's possible. Number two, there is no way it can rely on you. It cannot rely on you. That means the business cannot rely on your day-to-day operations on it. So you can't be consistently, you can't really, at that point, to get $1 million, you can't ever be on the truck unless you're just some random occurrence where you're subbing in because you've got several people out sick. And then the only time you'd be on the job is if you're actually stopping in to make sure things are being done correctly. If the business relies on you, that business is probably just worth what you have as far as the equipment. It could be worth that, you know, just the whatever equity you have in the equipment. It might be worth more if you're paying yourself a fair salary, but even if you're paying yourself a fair salary to manage the business is going to be worth more to an investor, and that's who you need to aim this at, as an investor. It's going to be worth more to an investor if you've got a manager in place and it's not relying on you at all for day-to-day operations. You're making sure things are ticking along correctly, but you got a manager that's in place and has been running things correctly. So, a couple principles, a few steps, a few things that have to happen to get to that $1 million a year business. Number one, you need to build it to sell. So right from the very start, or if you're already in business, you need to begin working towards this. You need to be setting up, even if you don't even plan on selling. I don't plan on selling junk doctors. We don't plan on selling it. But we're always building it to sell. We're always trying to maximize its value. If we ever do want to sell it, great. If not, we've got a great sound business that doesn't rely on us if we're constantly building it to sell. You need to build it for an investor. Anybody that's going to spend $1 million is going to be an investor. That doesn't necessarily mean that their investor's is going to want to be completely hands-off, but there's a good possibility that particular person will. That particular person's looking to spend, you know, $1 million, and they want to get that money back out of it in 7, 8, 10 years at most. You know, they want that money back out of it, probably less than that, anywhere from 5 to 10 years. They want to make sure they get that back out of that business. It needs to be built to run without you, like we just covered. It needs to be systemized. So what does that mean? That means that every aspect of the business is documented and you have established procedures in place. You're not just winging it. We'll get into that further in just a minute. And then the final thing is, once you've got it to that point, you're going to need to monitor it. You're going to need to make sure that the systems you've created or the systems that you use are being done correctly. You still need to stop in on jobs. You still need to do some occasional customer follow-up calls. You still need to make sure that your team members and all are getting in on time and that your manager is doing their job. And you watching your numbers like crazy, like a hawk, is extremely important. Looking at that P&L statement and have some other metrics you follow. So these are general principles on something that's got to get done to get your business to that $1 million price point. So we'll get some even more concrete steps towards the end of this video. We'll actually tell you exactly steps you need to do in almost the order you need to do it if you're starting a brand new business to get it to that point. So how do you determine the value of a junk removal business? The easiest thing, it's going to be a multiple of revenue. So generally, it's going to be worth somewhere between 3 to 5 times your net profit. I said multiple of revenue. It's a multiple of profit. So 3 to 5 times your net profit on generally. So what you need to do to get it to $1 million, we'll cover that in a minute. So valued 3x to 5x net profit. And that's after paying yourself and or a manager. Again, ideally you have a manager. You're not the one that's self-managing it if you're actually looking to sell. If you enjoy the work, if you enjoy the management aspect of it, want to do it, that's great. You also make more money because you save on not having to pay that manager. But if you're serious about wanting to sell it, it's more valuable if you have a manager in place and have had a manager in place for some length of period of time, and that the business has continued to be successful without you doing all the day-to-day operations. So again, it's more desirable with that manager. It's less desirable if the majority of your income is from just a few customers. So we've got some big customers at a couple of our locations, and when we first started out, we were lucky. We went into Charlotte. We got this massive contract, and it was at one point it was like 70% of our revenue in Charlotte, and that's kind of scary because you're going out there, you're buying trucks, you're hiring people, and then everybody's relying on that contract to continue renewing and continue bringing as much money as it currently does. So an investor's not really going to be interested in the business if you only have 1 or 2 contracts that are bringing in pretty much all of your money or a large percentage of your money. Don't rely on just a few customers. All it takes is that one customer to go out of business, or that one customer to quit offering the service they need you to provide, or any, when you're relying on 1 or 2 of anything, it's not a good thing, and investors are going to really shy away from a business that relies on just a few people. It's worth more with a longer track record. So we're just going to star these instead of steps. Worth more with a longer track record. So you need at least, at minimum, 2 good years, and you'd love to have 3 good years of very profitable work of whatever your net profit. You want to see your net profit consistently growing, hit a certain point, and then still be growing over about a 3-year period, 2-year minimum, 3-year period in order to get that 5x. You're going to need a probably 3-year history to get that 5x net profit. You might be able to get, if you want a 3x net profit, a 2-year history might work as well. And then obviously, I've said it before, it's worth a heck of a lot more if systemized. So if you're winging it, if it's relying on just 1 or 2 really good employees, it's worth less. It's the system that people want. So it's worth a heck of a lot more if it's systemized. So we've covered how it's valued, 3x times 5x net profit plus whatever cost of equipment you have or any other property you own. So what are some concrete steps you need to take to get you a $1 million business? A business that's worth $1 million. You could sell it, you could cash out for $1 million bucks. What are some concrete steps? So this is gonna be for if you're not in business now. $1 million your business, you're gonna need around $250,000 profit. And that's give or take, obviously. I mean, that can vary a little bit, but that's net profit after all expenses paid, after manager's been paid, after you've been paid, after everything's been paid. You need to see about a $250K profit. And you're going to need that for 2 to 3 years. Now, once you get to it, once you get to that 250K profit, it needs to continue growing some. You don't want it. You don't want it limited to just that. You know, you don't want to get to 250 and then hang at 250 for the next 2 or 3 years. It needs to be rising. They need to. An investor wants to see some consistent growth. You're going to need operations manuals. We mentioned you're going to need a manager in place, and you're going to need to keep meticulous financial records and know your numbers at all times. So you need to know exactly what your expense percentages are, and if an expense percentage begins to get off, you need to be able to address that and get it fixed. And you've got to pay all taxes. Don't get behind with the IRS. Don't not file your taxes. Don't hide income. You need to report everything. If you're trying to build a business worth $1 million a year, if you got $50,000 a year in cash that you're not reporting, or $100,000 a year in cash you're not reporting, yeah, that might be great for you to spend, and you save that 30%, but you've missed out on that income. You've made your P&L statement look a heck of a lot less, which has made your business worth much, 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 much less. So you got to report all your income. You got to do all the taxes. So let's roll straight into steps that you need to do, concrete steps that you need to do. I was getting ahead of myself earlier. To get yourself to a $1 million business. Number one, I mentioned it before, get the right mindset. That's the very first thing. We talked about it right at the start. If an opportunity or decision needs to be made about anything, about going into demolition, about going into new construction cleanup or whatever, you need to always keep it in context. If you truly want to build a business worth $1 million, you need to keep it in context, which is, do I want to do this move? Is it going to lead me to have a $1 million business? If the answer is no, there's a good opportunity, a good chance you shouldn't do it. You need to start right. You need to go to get incorporated, and you need to get insurance. It is expensive. It's going to hinder your profits at the start for sure, because there's a lot of fixed cost here. Incorporating is not expensive, but the insurance part is expensive. Your workers' comp is expensive. Your GL is extremely expensive, but you're going to be hitting that minimum amount at the start. And your commercial auto with just one vehicle is as far as a percentage of income is pretty high. But you've got to do that. You got to protect yourself. If you get sued or something, you have a major accident or a big worker injury, you could be DOA, you could be dead on arrival. You could be gone before you even got started to get to that $1 million price point. So you've got to get insured. To remove time, you need to get that system. You can actually get, and this is why JRA is so neat, and our business package is so neat. You can remove time from the equation. You can remove years from the time it takes you to get to this point, by going ahead and having a system in place. If you go with a franchise, you've got that going for you. If you're not the franchise person, or if you don't have the money to go out and spend a franchise, $7,500 will get you our business package. Every single person out there can figure out a way to come up with $7,500 if it's going to lead to you getting a $1 million business. This right here, I can promise you, the materials we provide, the video training we provide, the operations manual we provide, we have hundreds, if not, depending on when you buy this, we either have hundreds or thousands of hours into the system. $7,500 gets you so far ahead of the game. It wasn't around, obviously, because we created it when Junk Doctors got in business. If it was, I'd have found a way to come up with $7,500 and get it. So otherwise, I've already said that one of the steps you've got to do to get it to that point is you got to have operations manuals and systems in place. This is your system, guys. Instead of you spending the hundreds or the thousands of hours developing it, it's already done. $7,500, it could be yours. Just let us know if you want that step. For those of you that are going to skip that step, I know there's going to be a few of you that do. There's going to be a lot of you that do. You're going to need to. Irregardless, if you're not going to do this step, I should put a little asterisk or something beside this, maybe, or star. If you're not going to do this step, you just skip that one and go on to the next one. And you're going to have to cut personal spending back. Unless you've got money already, significant savings or other income, it's got to get cut. To get this done in any reasonable time frame, you're going to have to be very, very aggressive on your spending and on your advertising to get to this $1 million. That means you're gonna have to live extremely cheap. What was it Dave Ramsey says? Beans and rice, rice and beans. That's pretty. Ramen noodles. You can add that in there. That's pretty much almost what you're gonna have to do if you're gonna be really serious about getting to that level of income. Or if you have if you have a spouse that works and all like that, that obviously helps offset how cheap you might have to live. But you're gonna have to cut back to make this work. I mentioned advertising. You need to advertise like a maniac and sell like a maniac. It is a very noisy world out there. There has been umpteen dozen junk removal companies that have come in business since even Junk Doctors got in business. Now, we've had some since go out, but all the time you turn around, there's another business coming in. Everybody's got a website now. Most people are trying some form of SEO. A lot of people are doing it on their own, and with kind of poor results a lot of times. What happens though is if you have a bunch of business doing it on their own with some poor results, or if they're going out there and they're hiring a cheap SEO company that might be getting them on the first page, but not towards the top of the first page, you got a lot of people kind of running in the middle. You got a lot of people running in the middle of the pack. You're not going to win. You're not going to be successful if you're running in the middle of the pack. If you want to get to the business to $1 million business, you've got to commit to really grow it large. You should not dabble. I say it all the time. Do not dabble in this business, or you're going to get crushed. You might as well go work for somebody else. It can get scary. This advertising, Google AdWords, SEO. What a good SEO. We charge $1,500 a month for SEO. What a good SEO firm charges. I mean, that's pretty scary. We tell people it's going to take 6 months, so that's close to almost $10,000 to get to like a top 4 ranking, depending on your market. In about 6 months. It could be sooner than that, depending on your market. And it's not 100% guaranteed, but that's what it's going to take to get you up there. And you've got to be willing to lead. You can't be in that middle of the pack to make this work. You need to be a stickler on the details. This is one of the hardest things. One of the most critical things is as you grow, the phone stuff. Who's answering your phones? It is amazing how many more appointments you can get by properly explaining pricing, asking for the close, and having some basic sales skills to get people booked. Yeah, you can increase over some people. You can over 100% more bookings. I mean, you take somebody that's not very good on the phone. I can put myself or somebody that is good on the phone, and we could do 3-4 times the amount of bookings easily by just asking for the sale and knowing how to explain things. So the phone, job quality. If your job quality begins to falter, then you're not going to get referrals, you're not going to get good reviews, you're not going to get repeat business. So one of the most difficult things is as you grow, when you get off the truck and you start hiring people and you get a manager in place, you've got to check over these people and make sure they're still doing a good job. If not, your growth's going to get stunted. You could actually retract. If you get a bad reputation online, your business is going to be much less valuable to a potential buyer. So you need to charge enough to profit. A lot of people want to go in and they want to be the cheap competitor. I mean, that was when we got in business, we were like, we're going to go in, we're going to be cheaper than One Who's Got Junk. We're going to be the cheapest person out there. Everybody's going to find us. They're going to use us because we're so much cheaper. We're willing to work hard. We're going to get more volume to make up for the less price, and we're going to kick everybody's ass by just being the cheapest competitor or the cheapest company. The issue with that is nobody's going to find out about you. We just talked about you have to advertise like a maniac. You're not going to have the money to advertise like a maniac if you're not charging enough money. So you can have the cheapest, best service in the world out there, but if nobody knows about you, you're not any good to anybody. So people really aren't going to take the time to go through what I say earlier about the Google rankings. They're not going to take through the time to go through 8 or 10 different junk removal companies. They're going to look at 2, 3, maybe 4. And after that, if you're any lower, the only people that are going to find you are the people that are shopping for the absolute lowest price. You better be the cheapest person to get that job. But that customer right there, as soon as you raise your prices, they ain't coming back to you. That's not a repeat customer. That's somebody that every single time, all they're doing is looking for the cheapest company. Got to charge enough to make a profit so you can afford to reinvest and advertise in your business. So this goes back to what I was talking about advertising. Super aggressive. You need to be super aggressive First 3 years. Your business, the first 3 years, should pretty much consume your life. Those first 3 years are critical to your long-term success, to getting you to that $1 million a year business. By year 3 and after year 3, you can then start getting that manager in place and beginning to have more freedom than you've ever had, certainly when running your business, and then even for working for somebody else. So it takes sacrifice. You've got to put off today for a better tomorrow. So if you can't do that, then you're not going to get to this point. You're not going to have a successful business. That first 3 years requires so much time and thought and effort. It's crazy. A lot of people get burnt out. They'll never make it to that because they're not going to be able to dedicate 3 years to really, really, really focusing in on their business. It's a lot of family sacrifice too. So, I mean, before you get into business, you need to have talked this over with your wife, your family, and make sure this is something that you're going to be able to do. Try and involve them. I mean, business can be something that's really, really fun with the right people for a family to really, really tackle. But if you're not willing to make that sacrifice, you probably shouldn't get into business if your goal is to do this. Know your numbers. I've said this a few times for a reason. It's important. So your profit and loss statement is by far the most important. Your cash flow, well, profit and loss and cash flow statement. You need the cash flow to stay in business. Normally in junk removal, you don't have enough debt that cash flow is an issue, or you don't have enough customers you bill where you're behind on collecting receivables. That's normally not the case. So generally, your P&L statement is going to be your most important. Some businesses, cash flow is most important because if you ain't got the cash flow, you don't have operating capital or money to operate. So, but watch both of those very carefully. Your labor percentage, if it ticks up a little, you need to be aware of it because you've got somebody underquoting, or you've had to raise your people's pay and you haven't upped your prices. You really, really need to watch that. That's one of the things you're looking at on your P&L. You also need to know what advertising is working, what advertising is not working. If you work with us on our business package, we're going to tell you what works and what doesn't. And I mean, I'll come out right now and let you know. Online advertising is where it's at now, but you need to be visiting apartment complexes, getting on the phone, talking to professional organizers, getting involved in Chamber of Commerce meetings. But you need to track that stuff. Print advertising, for the most part, doesn't work very well. It's not very profitable. That doesn't mean you don't do it. We did it for a long time because we were aiming for this. We knew that if we got out there, even if we were losing a little bit of money on each job we did, we were building a potential long-term customer, and we were, which would lead to referral business and reviews, and then obviously that repeat business. So the lifetime value of the customer can be worth it on print advertising. We've dropped most of our print, though, in recent years as we've gotten to the point where we've exceeded this. Then we started really focusing in on max profit. You got to get the sales first. Once you have all the sales, then you start focusing in on profit. You're not going to get to $250,000 a year in net profit off of $250,000 of sales, or off of even $500,000 in sales. You're probably going to need $1 million plus, probably closer to 1.2, 1.5 million, somewhere in there, to get to $250,000 net profit with a manager in place. So you got to get the sales first, then focus in on the profit. So have/promote a manager. If you want to continue managing, just make sure you're paying yourself a fair salary for a manager, and I would have at least a couple supervisors in place. I would have at least a couple supervisors in place that can run stuff when you go out of town. Because if you give this thing 3 years, if you give it 3 years of hard work, you want to be able to take some vacation and all after that. You need to have a supervisor in place that can keep things rolling. And then you need to monitor results once you have that manager. Again, you got to make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, guys, this all comes down to not thinking you're a junk man. You're not a junk man. You get in this, you're a business person. It just so happens you chose junk removal. So I'm not passionate about junk. Junk doesn't turn me on. Some people get into business, they're turned on by junk. They want to go out there. They want to save the world by recycling and donating and being extremely environmentally friendly, where they like going through the stuff and they like selling it and that sort of stuff. That's not me. It never was. It was just junk removal was the business that I kind of fell into. And it's a great business to get in. That's the reason I'm pushing it now. Once we've gotten to this point, you know, I'm trying to get people on the same level. But it's not about the junk. It's about the opportunity you can to build you a great business that you can pass on to your family. You can sell, look after yourself, look after your family, provide good employment for a lot of people. But it's not to get this to here. You're not going to. It's not going to be about the junk. It's going to be this. You're a business person. You're going to make smart business decisions to get to that point. So when you get ready to sell it, there's, you know, that once you get to the point where you've got $1 million business, you just got to put in some calls to some business brokers. Just like a real estate broker, there are business brokers out there. There's online and local. So you want to get listed on both. If they'll let you list on both, you need to ask around. You get details. Some people want an exclusive listing. Some people you can list with multiple different avenues. Ideally, you want to list in multiple different avenues because that's going to open you up to the most amount of people. Selling your business locally, it can definitely work, but you don't want to exclude online, because if you get to the point where you have a manager in place, you're not having to be involved in the day-to-day operations, and you've got a business that's profiting $250K a year. You got people that are interested, live all throughout the country, in potentially purchasing your business. Now, when you get this thing built to $250,000 a year profit, you're gonna really question yourself, like, why don't I want to sell? I got a business that's bringing in $250,000 a year. I might only have to work 5 or 10 hours a week. Why sell a business, get that $1 million, and I could have that anyway in 5 years. So that's a decision you're going to have to make. I think a lot of people set this as a goal. It's a great goal. And then I imagine a lot of people, once they get there, you're not going to want to sell because you've got such a great investment. That's the reason somebody's coming in and they're wanting to purchase it from you. Great target to make. If you want it accelerated, if you want to remove time from the equation, if you want to have a lower overall investment, a much lower overall investment by like $100,000 lower, our business package is going to get you straight. It's going to get you educated. It's going to get you a system in place where you can really come into a market with hard work, dedication, and aggressiveness towards advertising. You can really begin to dominate your particular market, just as we did in the markets we're in. Give us a call, 919-617-1975. Visit us online at junkrA.com. We got a lot of great free information on junkrA.com. Looking forward to hearing everybody. Hope y'all enjoyed this video, and we'll be back before you know it. Thanks, guys.